Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I want to start with saying how much I appreciate all that you do. I am the daughter of two teachers, and I have 5 children, and I feel very grateful to all the educators out there. And I know this time of year is really, really busy. So the fact that you're logged in here today watching this to help you implement this program better just speaks volumes to the kind of educator you are. So thank you very much for being here. Like you, we have a very mixed group of attendees, I'm sure. Some of you are brand new to Read Live and others have been using it for a while, and this is hopefully a refresher or a place to get quick information. So I hope to meet all of you to provide you with information that you need. We will be providing links to videos that when I mention them, as well as recordings if there's anyone that needs to review certain topics. We're going to be talking today about placement within Read Naturally Live. So of the teacher responsibilities, placing students is the second responsibility, right? First, you have to go get your classroom set up, add your students, decide who's going to be in there. And then once you've determined which students will use Read Naturally Live, you need to place them into the appropriate program. Then, of course, there's implementing steps and monitoring student performance. We will have sessions on these topics a little bit further down the road on the calendar. But today we're just going to be focusing on placing students within Read Naturally Live. So when you're doing placement, what you're doing is determining which level is appropriate for each student, which level within the Read Naturally program, which might be slightly different from what their instructional level is, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Then you're going to pick which series. There are a few different options for series for every student who's using Read Naturally Live, and so we'll talk about how to determine which one. And then finally, you're going to set a goal. Now, by goal, I don't mean a long-term fluency goal. I mean a story goal within the program. So what that goal is the number of words correct per minute that you want the student to be able to read at the end of working in the program. So at the end of going through all the steps with one story, that would be their final read, okay? One thing that is important to keep in mind as we're talking about placement is that there's actually 2 phases. There's conducting initial placement, that's what we're talking about today, and then there's checking initial placement. At the end of our session today, I will talk a little bit about checking placement. And there is going to be a whole nother webinar on that topic alone coming in the next few weeks. So today our focus is going to be conducting initial placement. And that's exactly what it sounds like. You're figuring out exactly what level is right for the student right at the beginning of using the intervention, okay? It is imperative that you have about 5 minutes per student to conduct initial placement. You do need one-on-one time. As you can see in the picture on my slide, there is a teacher sitting at a computer with a student, and they are both looking at the same screen. That is what placement should look like when you go to do it with your students. The first thing we think about when the student comes to us is to determine whether or not the student has fluency needs primarily, so usually fluency and comprehension. There are also some students who really just have phonics needs, although that's probably a fairly small group. Usually kids with phonics needs also struggle with fluency, of course. And then there's also a good chunk of students that have both fluency and phonics needs. Okay, so we're going to talk about these 3 different categories. And we're going to start with the simplest, which is students who have fluency needs. So we'll provide a little information and some sample students, Anna and Rob being those 2 students that we'll talk about. The very first thing you as the teacher needs to do is to estimate what level you think the student is reading at, okay? It's an estimate, right? So it's just a guess. It will likely be a little wrong, and that's okay. And you're just going to use whatever information you have. Maybe you have some standardized assessments. Maybe you know the teacher from last year that had that student. You can talk to that teacher. Maybe you have some oral reading fluency assessments and screeners, right? And that will just give you enough information to start. Now, I often get the question, can't I use those fluency assessment and screeners to place them? No. You can use them to pick where you will start placement, but that can't be how you place them, because our students place based on what level is right for them with this program. And I'll explain that when I go through the actual process. I'm actually going to log into the program and let you see what it looks like. And so I'll address that when we get to that point. But I want you to think about a specific student. Okay, so we're going to give you some data on Anna, just a little information. And then in your head, I want you to think, well, what level might I start Anna if Anna was my student? So Anna is a 7th grader. She's well below expectations on standardized tests. Her English teacher says 6th grade novels are a little hard for her. And she's below expectations on her fall fluency benchmark assessment. So we have levels from 1.0 to 8.0, right? 1st through 8th grade reading level. If Anna was your student, where would you start placement? You have to pick one of those levels to begin placement. Where might you start? Think about that for a moment. If you were somewhere close to 5.0, that's great. Okay. If you were at 4.5, mid 5th, even early 4th, you will still get to the right place. Okay, so don't take a lot of time in your estimate. You'll get to the right place. It might mean you have to have Anna read an additional story. So the closer you are to the estimate, probably the fewer passages you'll have to give the student, but it's only a 1-minute timing. Okay, so don't spend too much time on that estimate. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out of my PowerPoint and I'm actually going to go into the actual program. I'm going to log in as a staff member. Actually, I'm going to log in as a teacher. Okay. And I'm going to go to my home screen. And you can see that there's a number of different tiles on this screen. Now we have webinars that address specifically getting accounts set up for one school or multiple schools. So we won't go into details about that today. But the place that you need to find your student or add your student is going to be under student setup. Okay. So if I click on the student setup, one thing I recommend doing before you add a student is check and make sure they're not in there already. Okay, so the way I would recommend doing that is clicking on the 3 horizontal bars next to the first name or last name and entering that student's name in and clicking apply. So it looks like Anna is not already in my account. So I can clear that filter by clicking back again on those 3 horizontal lines and hitting reset. All my students will appear again. But I know that there's no student in there named Anna. So I am going to add Anna to the account here. You only need to fill in fields that have an asterisk. And Anna needs to have a user ID that is unique to her, but the password doesn't need to be. And I don't think those 2 passwords match. They do need to match. So the one thing that you do need to, of course, make sure is that Anna has a license, okay? Because she can't work in the program unless she does. And then you would select yourself as her lead teacher. Right now, I'm going to have Anna work and read naturally live, and I want her to have access to 1-minute reader live. 1-minute reader live is an independent reading program, and it is a great resource while you're placing students. Now, I casually said that, oh, placement takes about 5 minutes per student. And that's a really short amount of time if you have one student. And I know you have more than one. So 1-minute reader live is a great resource for you. And it will free you up so that you can do individualized placement while all the other kids in that group can go through and work in 1-minute reader live. Okay, so I usually leave both of these selected, right? And then I click save and close. And now I can see that Anna Anderson has been added. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my home page and navigate over to Read Naturally Live. If you look, my mouse or my cursor, my little hand there is circling on the middle right-hand side of the page, Read Naturally Live. There's a little bulleted list. The first item that you can do within there is place my licensed students. So Anna is one of my licensed students now. I can click on there. I can find her name in my list. and I can locate the place button. Now, the most common issue that comes here is that your screen may auto fit in a way that the place button is not immediately visible to you. So notice there's a toolbar at the bottom that goes from right to left. Okay, so you can move that back and forth until you find this place button. Also notice that series, level, and goal are blank next to Anna because she hasn't been placed yet. These other students who have assignments have already been placed. So if you have a student who used this program last year and they've already been placed, that student can pick up where they left off. Okay, if they were using Read Naturally Live in the spring of last school year, let them just pick up where they left off. That will work very well. Okay. All right, so now Anna hasn't. She didn't work in it last year, so we're going to click the place button next to Anna's name. And remember, here are the different levels that are available to test. We have different series that are available at each level. Okay, so if I click on one of these circle buttons with the eye, a little box open and it tells me we have the sequence series available at the early second grade. I also have a couple levels in the phonics series, blends and digraphs to be specific. But Anna, I'm working on in a fifth grade level. At Fit 5.0, the sequence series is the only series available. And I don't know about you, but sometimes that's nice to not have to make a decision, right? So if Anna places in this level, I'm going to have one option. A student who places in a different level will be presented with all the different options that are available to you. And we have an example of that coming. Okay, so don't worry about that now. We'll talk about that in a moment. So now when Anna is sitting next to you at your computer, you'll say to her, read for me as well as you can. As soon as you start reading, I'll start the timer. And so then when Anna starts reading, you can click that start timing button. And now she is reading out loud to you. What you are doing as she is reading is keeping track of any errors she has. Okay, if she misses a word, if she reads a word incorrectly, make a little dash mark on a piece of paper on your desk, because at the end of the minute timing, you're going to enter the number of missed words into this little rectangle. Okay. Now, Anna is going to place in a level that is a little bit above her instructional level. Okay. That is by design. So Read Naturally Live has a lot of supports that are built right into the program. Remember, students read along with audio support. They practice reading the same thing over and over and over again. Because of that support, they can function just a bit higher. Sorry. So now the audio in the computer says, click on the last word you read when the bell sounded. I click on the last word I heard Anna read when I heard the bell go off. It says that that is word number 87, but I know that Anna made 2 mistakes. So I'm going to enter that into the box. Go to the lower right-hand corner where the next button is, and I'm provided with Anna's information. So in level 5.0, Anna read 85 words correct per minute. That is outside the range, okay, on the high end. So guess what? Not only does the computer tell you, nope, this isn't the right fit, her words correct per minute score isn't within the range, but it also suggests where to go, okay? So because her words are outside the range on the high end, you are recommending, or the computer is recommending you test in the next level up. So you'll select 5.6 and you'll do the exact same thing for this passage. You'll say, as soon as I hear you start reading, Anna, I start your timer. As Anna's reading, you're going to keep track of errors again. Okay. As I was saying in the last passage, our placement program will put kids in a level that's a little bit higher than where they're at from a fluency standpoint, because the program provides so much support. So there's the read along, there's the repeated readings for the practices. There's also a vocabulary step. There's a number of words that are hyperlinked to definitions so they can work on comprehension through additional vocabulary lessons. And so all of that support helps them function a little higher than they could without the support. And I believe it's one of the reasons why the program stretches students so well, is because get them exposed to content that they would not be able to handle without the support of the program. So it's one of the ways that we can get students working in a higher level. So now click on the last word you read when the bell sounded again. We enter the number of missed words. And when I click next, now Anna in the mid-fifth grade level, she read 82 words correct per minute, which is in the range for the mid-fifth grade level. So the computer is recommending to stop testing and pick a level. There's only one level to pick. At that high of a level, we only have one option in the sequence series. If there were multiple options, they would all be listed here, okay? If for some reason I know something about Anna that tells me this isn't going to go well, I can continue testing. I can override the computer. So for example, let's say you have a student who is a little more fluent than they are able to understand. That's common for an English language learner. It would be common for any student who has a small vocabulary, whether it's because they're learning a whole nother language or some other reason. So you might decide, you know what, she made 5.6, but she's really on the low end. And she missed 5.0, but just by a little bit, I'm going to put her there instead. Okay, so you can override the computer. If there's something specific you know about a student that makes you want them to be on a different end than what you're putting them, you can do that. Okay, most of the time, picking what the computer recommends is right. Now, another point, I'm going to talk about checking placement, which is something we do when we have more data. When a student is struggling with reading, time is of the essence. So if our placement process takes 25, 30 minutes for each kid, think of how much longer, how many weeks you're going to have to take in placing kids that then you can't do intervention, right? So we want to get kids placed and going as quickly as possible. And then once we have some data from the stories they're working in, that's when we do that second phase checking placement. So that's when if a student has a comprehension issue, you will find it then very early on, and then you can adjust, all right? So I'll again mention that one more time before we go. But now we can see that Anna is going to be put in the sequence series level 5.6 with a story goal of 120, okay? So now Anna's been put in there. So what do I mean by a story goal? Well, the story goal for Anna is the placement score plus 40 because Anna's in fifth grade or above. She's a seventh grader. And that's not the level that she's working in. What I mean by Anna is that the actual age of the student, not their level, okay? So if the age of the student is fifth grade or above, the computer takes that placement score and adds 40 and then rounds down to the nearest 5. You don't need to memorize this. Okay, the computer has memorized it for you, but that's just the reasoning behind it in case you want to go back. So Anna's done. All right, Anna is done. She's 5.6. Anna can start working in the program. We have student training videos that you can have Anna go through and learn how to do the steps properly, and she can get going. All right. Now, Anna was a really nice student in that she fit nicely into one level and there was no confusion. And that is what will happen usually, okay? But sometimes students place between levels. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about with Rob. So Rob is a fourth grader. He's about a year below grade level. You give him 3.0 and he reads outside the range on the high end. Okay, so you can see in this placement table, 3.0, we want it 30 to 60, he's reading 65. So the computer says, test him at the next level up. And when you do, now he's outside the range on the low end, right? That's going to happen. Not a lot, but it will happen. And our recommendation always kind of makes me laugh a little. It says, well, the student's results don't fit. So use what you know and make a decision, okay? That's all we can tell you. So if Rob is an English language learner or struggles with comprehension as well, I'm going low, right? I'm going to put him in 3.0. If Rob is a bright kid, he's got a big oral vocabulary and does well with a challenge, put him in a higher level. If you know nothing about Rob, I tend to go with the lower one, okay? And the reason I do this, and I encourage you that if you choose the lower one, remember to move him up quickly. He won't need to be in that level long. And what a great moment it is for you and Rob mostly when you get to say after just a few stories, guess what? You're ready for something harder already. Okay. So if you know nothing, that's a good opportunity. But if you go with the lower level, don't forget to move to check placement and move him up as soon as you can. Okay. Because remember, we got to stretch Rob. He can't just make progress. He has to make more progress than his peers in order to catch up. So we're going to put Rob in 3.0. Rob is a fourth grader. So the computer only adds 30. And again, it's the age of the student, and it's because older students tend to be able to make larger gains in the same amount of time. So that's the reasoning behind that. So 65 was his score on level 3.0. The computer added 30. The rounding was not necessary with this example. So Rob is done. He's going to work in 3.0 of the sequence series. Okay. Now, there's an exception to this. Let's say you have a beginning reader and you give her the level 1.0 and she falls outside that range. So look at the bottom corner where this, put your eyes down here where the placement table is. Let's say when you give her 1.0, she only reads 23 words correct per minute, outside the range on the low end. She can still work and read naturally live if she knows her beginning sounds and can recognize about 50 written words. Okay. Not a specific list, but somewhere in that range, some CVC words, maybe a few high frequency words. And then you can put her in one of those two levels. My preference is to put her in the phonics series. I have never met a beginning reader who couldn't benefit from additional phonics instruction, right? They will still work on fluency, they will still work on comprehension, but she will get a little bit of phonics instruction. It's also a little easier, as the level indicates. 0.8 is below 1.0, right? And 0.8 stories are a little easier. They get a little phonics lesson, they practice decoding a particular sound or pattern, and then the words in that passage, many of them are of that sound or pattern. So it's just a little bit easier. So I usually, I actually can't think of an exception that I've put my beginning readers who fall just below in that phonics series. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about this second group, students who have both fluency and phonics issues. All right. We have a couple options, and they include the Read Naturally Live phonics series is one of those options. Okay. If your student reads at a first, second, or very early third grade level and has a phonics issue, they may be able to address fluency, phonics, the comprehension all in the same place. Okay. But only if the student reads below a Read Naturally 3.0 level. You need to know what the student's phonics needs are. I'm going to show you something in about 10 minutes. I'm going to show you where you can access a phonics assessment that we have for our phonics program, which is called Word Warmups Live. Okay. We have a phonics program in Read Live. Most of you are probably aware. It's called Word Warmups Live. And so we have a way to assess students in there. If you have another tool that you already use, that's just fine. Okay. But you do need to know what your students' phonics needs are. So if your student struggles with blends and digraphs, and you think they're reading around a second grade level, as you can see is highlighted in, I don't know what color that is. It's like an orangey tan, whatever it is. That would be, then you would give that student level 2.0 in the placement, just like I showed you how with Anna, instead of picking 5.0, you'd pick 2.0. And if her score was within the range for that level, then you could put her in digraphs and blends, and that would be listed as an option. So you don't need to memorize where those skills are taught, which level. The computer knows, and it will be listed as an option. Okay. If she doesn't place in 2.0, let's say you give her 2.0, it's way too easy. So you give her 2.5. You don't want to hold her back to address that phonics issue. Okay. I'm going to give you a little example. Read Naturally runs a reading lab at a school near our office, and we work with second through fifth graders in that building. Most second graders come in and end up in a phonics level because most second graders read at a first or second grade reading level. and they have phonics needs. Okay. Now we have some 4th and 5th graders who also have phonics issues, but most of those kids read at a 3rd or 4th grade level, right? And I'm not going to hold back a kid to address the phonics issue. I am also not going to ignore that phonics issue. So Word Warmups Live is the option within Read Live that you can do to teach them both separately. And I'm about to walk you through that example in a moment. Okay, so if you're unsure right now, don't worry, we're going to address it now. So Ella is that 2nd grade student that I just talked to you about, right? I know she needs to work on fluency. I know she struggles with long vowels. I think she's reading at a mid 1st grade level. So I'm going to, just like I did with Anna, I'm going to log in. I'm going to find her name. I'm going to click the place button next to her name, and I'm going to give her 1.5. If she places in that range, I am going to be listed 3 different options. See, the sequence series 1.5 is one option. Otherwise, I can do long vowel pairs or long vowel silent E. Well, we know that Ella struggles with long vowels. Okay. So we're going to put her in the phonics series, level 1.3, long vowel silent E. Ella can work in Read Naturally Live phonics series to address her fluency, comprehension, and phonics needs. She'll get to work on decoding. She'll get phonics lessons. She'll get encoding spelling practice. Okay. But she also has comprehension questions and repeated reading and teacher modeling to get that fluency down. But Evan is a 5th grader. Okay. I think he's reading at a mid 5th grade level. I know he struggles with R control. Now, how do I know that? Maybe I did an assessment in phonics with some other assessment. Maybe I utilized the one in within Read Live. Page 21 of your handout lists the scope and sequence of Word Warmups Live. And so we're going to talk about that in a moment. I just want you to know that that's in there. I'll show it on my screen in a minute too. Okay, so we know Evan is reading at a mid 3rd grade level. We give him that passage in Read Naturally Live. He fits within that range. I have 2 options, but neither of them are R controlled. Neither of them are even phonics. I have an idioms option or a sequence series option. Okay, so because R controlled is not listed there, I know I have to address phonics separately. Okay, so I'm going to put Evan in 3.5 to work on fluency and comprehension, and I will work on phonics separately. Okay, so let's just talk for a moment about students who have either only phonics needs or phonics needs that can't be addressed in the phonics series of Read Naturally Live, right? Like Evan. Okay, that is what Word Warmups Live is for. Now, Word Warmups is a decoding phonics program within Read Live. If you have a Read Live subscription and you have licenses to Read Live, your kids can use this program. It reinforces phonemic awareness in phonics. It works on mastery and decoding. There's also encoding practice, and it supports fluency development. Now, I can't get into all the details on placing Word Warmups today, but I think next week or the week after that, I am going to do a webinar on placement and Word Warmups. Okay, so that is coming if you're interested in that. As I mentioned, we have the phonics assessment and we have the scope and sequence in Word Warmups. And I'm just going to pop into the program for a minute so I can show you where they are. So remember, here I am in Read Live program website, logged in as a staff member. If I go to the Word Warmups Live section, look, it says print phonics assessment. I can also assign and remove Word Warmups access from in there. So if I click on that, notice there's a blue button that says print phonics assessment. There's also two buttons down, one that says scope and sequence. Okay, so both of these are available within there. If I click print phonics assessment, a new tab opens. I am still logged in exactly where I am in the tab just to the left of it. Here's the assessment. I can print it. There's the actual assessment is in here as well as the scoring sheet. And again, I can't talk about it in detail today because of time, but there is a whole nother webinar devoted just to that topic. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure you could see where that was. Now I've lost my mouse. There it is. Okay. So Marcy is our example of a student who who only has phonics needs. And so I would administer the Word Warmups phonics assessment to identify her earliest phonics need, to place her in the appropriate level and section of Word Warmups Live, or to consider the phonics series. Okay. Now with Marcy, she doesn't have a fluency issue, so we're just going to use Word Warmups Live. What you're looking at right now is the scoring worksheet from Word Warmups Live phonics assessment. And again, I'll go into this in detail in the webinar that focuses on that. But basically, you take her through the different sections until you find the spot where she is not proficient enough, and then you can assign that section to her. Notice in this red box down here, it tells you you can either place this student in Word Warmups Level 1, Section D, or you can use Read Naturally Live Level 1.3 for phonics, because that's where this skill is taught. Okay, so that assessment also don't need to memorize where the levels are and where the phonics skills are taught. The assessment provides that for you. So we're going to have Marcy work in Word Warmups Live Level 1, Section D. That's all she's going to do, because we're not going to work on fluency with her. Evan, we would do the same thing. We would, if we knew he struggled with R controlled, I don't have to assess him again. I already know he struggles with R controlled. So I would find that on my scope and sequence, and I'd assign it to him. So Evan would work in Read Naturally Live sequence series to address fluency and comprehension. And he would work in Word Warmups Live, Level 1, Section G, to address his R control issue. Evan works in 2 programs. When you have a kid working in 2 programs, there's a couple different ways to do it. I recommend either switching them between the 2 programs when they at the pass point. So on the left side, you see Read Naturally Live, left side of my screen. So if the student goes through all the steps within Read Naturally Live and they pass the story, once they pass, then he can switch over and go through all the steps in Word Warmups Live until he passes an exercise, and then he can go back. So that's one way to do it. Another way is if you have 40 minutes, 35 to 45 minutes for your intervention time, you might decide you're going to spend the first 10 minutes in Word Warmups Live for those who need it, and the bell will ding. You'll set your little egg timer for 10 minutes. When the bell goes off, everybody switches over to Read Naturally Live for the last 25 minutes. Okay, so those are 2 different ways. If you have questions about that based on your own environment, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. So let us know. So don't worry, as you're going through placement, don't worry about recording how students did. The computer records and keeps track of all of that for you, and you can run simple reports that will include all the information from that Read Naturally Live placement. Okay, so it includes the student's results, what the computer recommended, and what your decision was. All right, so we just covered placing students, determining their level, selecting their series, and setting their goal. I mentioned that we have student training videos, and that link is in the chat box. It is the second link in the chat box. The first one is our handout, and the second one down is the student training video. So that way students can learn what is expected of them. I want to mention our help page. It has videos, it has written instructions, pictorial instructions. So however you like to consume information, it's at readnaturally.com/read-live-help. Okay, so that's at our company website. And as promised, I just want to make a nod to checking initial placement. The last page of your handout includes all of the links to the various resources for checking placement. I'm going to just show you quickly on our website what I'm talking about. So in checking initial placement, we have something that's called a checking initial placement calculator. As soon as your students pass 3 stories, you can run the students at a glance report, and don't worry about memorizing it. It tells you right here, run students at a glance report. You take the information from that report and you fill it into this, and it will tell you whether or not the student needs a higher level, higher goal, lower level, lower goal. And this takes into account comprehension. So if you're worried that you're creating a word caller, this will fix it for you. Okay, this will help you get the student into the level that's appropriate. You can never work on fluency in a vacuum. And so you need to do the checking placement so that you make sure your students are comprehending well enough to stay in that level. If they're not, you got to get them in a level that makes more sense for them. Okay, so this resource, thank you, was just sent through in the chat box as well. So your help page link is in the chat box. Go ahead and copy and paste that from there, as well as your checking initial placement calculator is also in the chat box, that link. So again, that's after students complete 3 stories. The range we say is somewhere between 2 and 6 stories is when you do checking initial placement. And I'm presenting another webinar on that topic specifically next month. So feel free to look for that. And if you come to that place before that webinar is aired live, we do have videos about the topic, and then that calculator that is in the chat box can help you with that. So thank you all very much for attending today, for everything you do for your kids. I sent mine off to school yesterday. It's kind of a joyful day. And I am grateful that I know they're going into a place that has educators like you there to help them. So thank you for all that you do. We do have a quick survey at the end. So when you log out, please, it's quick. It'll only take you less than a minute, but it does help us prepare for additional training opportunities. And again, thank you so much. Let us know when questions come up, and have a great day.